Hugh Hewitt is with us from Las Vegas. The host of the Hugh Hewitt radio show. Hugh, there's a moment in the American president when Michael J. Fox is on the phone with a member of Congress, and he says to that member of Congress, "It's just you and me." In effect, what's it going to be? So, Hugh, on what many people will see the disqualifying point of contention here, where do you come down on Donald Trump tonight?
The moment I thought he won 14 out of 15 rounds, but he hit himself in the head and knocked himself out. It is outside the norms of American political rhetoric to express a contingent acceptance of the result. As Chris Matthews noted, he might have phrased it in a way that said, if there is a state that is contested by a small number of votes, I will, like Al Gore, contest that state. But he didn't say that, and the contingent nature of his commitment to the results is unsettling to many people. I do believe he helped the down ticket a lot. I think he introduced the Project Veritas issue about who incited violence in Chicago into the mainstream. It was important. His media critique is well-founded about what gets covered. Dan Rather once said, "News is where you look." But that one exchange, I believe, has already dominated the post-debate and will travel until Election Day and far beyond. And I hope that someone is speaking to him now about the need to walk that back and to clarify that you cannot be contingent about elections that are not close. I wrote a book, the title of which is "If It's Not Close, They Can't Cheat." And it's absolutely true that where there might be a Florida 2000 situation where you have to go and look hard at one state in a close election, it is outside the norms of American political discourse, going back as far as I can go. Richard Nixon in 1960 had a legitimate case to contest the election and chose not to do so, because to have done so would have been to undermine the democracy. Nixon did a noble thing. Contingent rhetoric about results is not within our political norms.
Hugh Hewitt.
Yeah. Sorry, Hugh, can I just, on the Trump winning 14 of 15 rounds, I just have to ask you, because you've had such interesting back and forth with Trump directly on foreign policy. I felt like when he was talking about Mosul and when he was talking about Iran being the big winner on Mosul and that whole 42 commas answer that he gave where he was trying to come up with something to say about ISIS, I felt like there's no chance that he won that round. I know you and I see things differently in terms of where we are in the ideological number line, but I think we're probably pretty close in terms of assessing whether or not people make sense on foreign policy. Don't you think he was completely incoherent on Iraq?
No, I don't, Rachel. Selena Zito, who's a terrific writer now for The Atlantic, said that a lot of people in the media take Donald Trump literally but not seriously. His supporters take him seriously but not literally. During that ramble, and it was a walkabout, it was a very long, extended walkabout, what I heard was the critique I have leveled about President Obama, that his 6-word presidency is leading from behind, red line, and JVs. And what he was talking about was the vacuum that led to Mosul having to be fought, and whether or not it is strategically correct to telegraph your next punch. That critique has been around for a long time. So I thought that the base, and indeed some Americans who are now fighting, I was disturbed that neither candidate mentioned that thousands of Americans are actually in the battle for Mosul, in harm's way tonight. We ought to be praying for them. But I think people hear differently when they talk about foreign policy based upon their understanding of how we got where we are. And so I have to disagree with you on that. I do believe that it deserves a much fuller exploration of the details. And much of what was said tonight will not be understood because a lot of, as they say in a courtroom, evidence not in consideration. They had not made the argument fully. But nevertheless, the people who are upset with President Obama's foreign policy and Secretary of State Clinton in Libya, Syria, the Russian reset button, which is the worst photo taken by a Secretary of State in American history with Sergei Lavrov, is nevertheless going to be understood by them. So I think we have to agree to disagree on that, but I don't think we disagree on the rhetoric.
I hear you. I hear that you could make sense out of what he says, out of what he said. I maintain that he actually literally made no sense, but I think we're not far off on that. Thank you, Hugh.
But did he, Hugh, this is Gene Robinson, just very quickly. The question was, would you send in U.S. troops to hold Mosul after it's taken? That was the question. Hillary Clinton said no. Did you hear Donald Trump answer the question?
I heard him say that he would not be telegraphing his foreign policy in the way that President Obama has done. when he, for example, drew the red line and then did not enforce it. I hear a consistent critique throughout the Trump campaign that one does not telegraph what one is going to do when it comes to a war zone like that. I also heard him when Chris Wallace said, you said Aleppo has fallen, it hasn't fallen. He said, what do you want, a signed deed? And by that, I understood him completely, and I think a lot of Americans in the middle did. But Eugene, I think you'll agree with me on this. It's all overwhelmed by the center round. I don't think. I just don't think all these other conversations, when he brought up inciting violence at his rally in Chicago, he introduced a problem for fact checkers, the Project Veritas problem. I'm not endorsing an O'Keefe video without having fact checked it, but today that man resigned from the campaign. He had been to the White House 20+ times. It is a real legitimate critique as to whether or not the Democrats nominated the Republican nominee, and I think that will travel a long way. But nevertheless, much was lost in that one exchange.
Hugh Hewitt, thank you very much.